بروم شادان به فلک، دور از غمها، دور از همه کس. ندهم من ره به کسی، در بزم یار من باشم و بس. شاد و بی باک با عشقی پاک، بر این آب و خاک بپرم ز جهان چو هما به دل آسمان. تپش قلب پر از امید من، تپش زندگیه. دل من دیده من، دنیای من، همه تا بندگیه. شور من چشمه نور من. بروم شادان به فلک، دور از غمها، دور از همه کس. ندهم من ره به کسی، در بزم یار من باشم و بس. شاد و بی باک با عشقی پاک، بر این آب و خاک بپرم ز جهان چو هما به دل آسمان. تپش قلب پر از امید من، تپش زندگیه. دل من دیده من، دنیای من، همه تا بندگیه. شور من چشمه نور من.
And we're live. Welcome to the SoNo Show, episode 34, an Iranian perspective with a lion's root. Today, I'm going to take a bit of a break from the typical type of content that we have on this channel. And we're going to, one thing I've mentioned before is that I like to get perspectives, and I have a varied interest in the different peoples across the world. Of course, I am an ethno-nationalist, but what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look eastwards and get a friend's perspective, a Persian perspective, on some of the history of his country. And like I said, I am not, like I said in the Telegram post, I am not particularly well versed in the history of Iran. I know he had to correct me earlier. Unfortunately, here in Appalachia, we call Iran, Iran, or we call Iraq, Iraq. You know, this is just, I wanted to get his take on how you pronounce it, because I believe it's important for us to use the pronunciation of the natives. And anyways, without any further ado, how are you doing today, Surena? I'm probably going to butcher your name. I apologize.
Hi, Durud, as we say, and greetings to, of course, you, Nordic, and more greetings to your lovely audience, which I'm one of them as well. I've been following you for, I think, since 2021. For 2 years, I've enjoyed your streams, and I'm very glad to be a part of it. Thanks for having me here. And my pronunciation is Surena.
Surena.
Yeah.
Surena. All right. Sounds good. I'd like to welcome everybody to the chat. Thank y'all for stopping by. It's good to see you, cuz Harry Holler. Garbage Dump. Good to see you, my man. Let's see who else we got. Boss Chad, thanks for stopping in again. And yeah, let's. How you doing, Marcus Aurelius or Krusty? It's good to see you here, Krusty. So a little bit of context. That is, I really actually I enjoy that music that you had me play at the beginning. You suggested it to me early this morning. What's a little bit of the context behind that song and that music video the people mentioned?
Oh, nice that they mentioned. Well, yeah, I actually, even me, I didn't know about it until recently, this story. And most Iranians don't know because, I mean, it's not only the West which the history gets subverted and all, but I believe not one single island, one single place on Earth is far away from censorship and all the lies. So I got to know about it actually by the song itself on YouTube, and it turns out to be it's about the Iranian monarchist or imperialist air force we had, which was, if I'm right, 1925 until 1979, and we were the number 5 military power in the whole planet. So I believe after the United States, the Soviet Union, and probably Britain and France, then it was us actually. So we were even more powerful than Japan. Now, the power is one thing on one side. On the other side is, what do you use this power for? And with power comes responsibility. And Nader Jahanbani, the first man you have seen in the music video, he was basically the leader, or we call sepahdar, which means basically someone who holds like your military or army. So he was he was the head of the Air Force of Iran, and basically, I mean, this especially the second Shah, Muhammad Reza Shah himself, and all the elite we had, they really rose Iran from chambers, from really a very disastrous place we were. And in the military context, we became the third biggest air force in the world. And I believe we were the only nation, along with the United States of America, who had the F-4 Tomcat jet fighters.
Oh, the
And
F-14. I believe it's called the F-14 Tomcat. Interesting.
Yeah, F-14. Yeah, and I think we had the F-14, the Tomcat. There was the other variation. We had the lower variation as well, and I think 200 or 300 of them. And this is in the 70s. We're not talking about now. In the 70s, if you had even 10 or 20 of these, it was a big deal. Now, what did we do with them? Well, basically, simply by just having a very strong military and proud people behind it, the Middle East was relatively safe. And you had I would just tell you this. In fact, most people don't know about this, not even Iranians. The Israel and Egypt war ended, Israel-Arab war, I guess you call it, and Israel couldn't go more beyond from its modern today limits it has, the borders, so it couldn't get further into Syria or Jordan and all of these places, because Iran came into negotiations and basically, well, all sides came in, and Israel just knew they couldn't go on further since Iran was supporting Egypt with mainly with oil. So because of that, if it wasn't for Iran, the Middle East would have started to get a messy, bloody mess even earlier in the 60s. So this was the 60s, and there was also
wasn't the 6 Day War between Israel and the Arab countries? Wasn't that in 1967?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not exactly sure when, but it was somewhere in the 60s. Yeah.
And I think there was another conflict in 1973, but I can't remember the.
Exactly, man. That's even more interesting. So people think the Iran-Iraq war started in I think it's 81 or 80, and I apologize if I get the dates a little bit wrong, because we also have the Iranian or Persian calendar, which works differently.
Really?
So
interesting.
Yeah, because in Iran it starts from the basically start of Islam, like with the Western system, it starts with the Christ, right? So
yes,
this like that. So I need to calculate the dates sometimes, and yeah, actually, before the famous 8-year war between Iraq and Iran, Iraq actually attempted to attack Iran in the time of the Shah, as you said, in 73. And he thought this maniac Saddam Hussein, which, I mean, he just wanted to own everything for himself. He was a narcissist, all of that. And he wanted to get south of Iran, Khuzestan region, which is has a lot of oil. But in fact, in less than a day, and I really mean it, in less than a day, the Iranian Air Force and army pushed him back, and they destroyed so many Iraqi tanks and vehicles that the Iraqis gave up and said, "I'm sorry, I would not even think about that anymore."
Yeah.
And this was so fast, and because it was so fast, in fact, that before the news got to Tehran, to the capital, by the office day, so when people go to work and they start to hear what's going on, before that, the war was done, the battle was ended.
Interesting.
And so what happened was, he couldn't, and Saddam did have a pretty good military back then. He already had lots of support from, I think,
United
both
States. I believe it was supported, yes.
Yeah. Also in the Iraq, later in the 8-year war, he got very supported by the United States of America and France, especially.
You know, that's this interesting sort of cycle that we see. You know, we at least here in America, what we do is we will help these countries in their conflicts with our greater perceived enemy, and then just a few years later, we find ourselves at war with them. With especially with Iraq and the. Let's see. You said the war would have ended in 1988, the 8-year war. So within 3 years of that, we were already, in Operation Desert Storm, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing when the Soviet Union was struggling against the Afghanistan people. We helped fund them, give them weaponry, and then lo and behold, about 20 years later, we're over there fighting against them. So it's
and then now you have this really. I mean, when Biden came to office, it even surprised me that what he did to just give free weapons to Taliban. I mean, I can't understand anyone who's a libertarian today. Back maybe 6 years ago, I would still understand a little bit, but now, oh my God, it's just crazy. And I actually didn't finish the story. So this was how powerful the Iranian military and air force was. And actually, the Iran-Iraq war, the 8-year war, Iran only didn't get conquered by Saddam and Iraq just because we had all this military gear, all this jet planes and tanks, and By the way, per every single Iraqi tank, we had one Apache. Sorry, was it the Apache or a Cobra? It was a Cobra helicopter, a chopper, you may call it.
Yes.
Uh, and yeah, only because of this genius planning and military, this didn't happen. However, the skills, I mean, you have the gear, but you also have the people, the skilled people who, many of them did see training in the US, for example. They all got executed by the Islamic terrorists in 1979. And Nader Janbani was one of them. And in fact, it's very sad. Many of them, not all, but a lot of them decided to stay in Iran even after the revolution and with the coming of Khomeini, because they said, I stand my ground and I'm not leaving this place because I know how to drive these vehicles or I know how to command the army. And they all got shot and executed. Then that's why the war was dragged so long, because we had the military here, but we didn't have the minds and the skills behind them to use them at their best potential. So so they either got executed like Jahan Bani, or they basically fled Iran. And for the Shah himself, for example, he fled
to
Egypt.
America.
He
ended up in America, I should say.
No, actually, he died in Egypt. You mean the son of him? Yeah, the prince. He went to the U.S. and he's in Maryland.
Yes. Yeah, the prince, I should say. Like I said, I'm not very knowledgeable about a lot of this stuff, so I figured, we would let you be the star of the show and let you shine here for us.
Well, I love to hear your opinions about the East and Iran in general, so don't worry about that.
Well, let's see what. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So yeah, some of them fled to the U.S. Many were not. This is crazy. Many were not even allowed to enter certain Western countries. So the prince, as you mentioned, who's now residing in the United States, Reza Pahlavi, and by the way, yes, he has the same name as his grandfather.
Okay, yes, the Pahlavi dynasty there.
Yes, this is the Pahlavi dynasty. So Pahlavi.
Yes.
And which started from just after the First World War until 1979. And the prince, Reza Pahlavi, was actually denied entrance into Western Germany at the time, which is very hypocritical, because just until the Islamic Revolution, we had very good economic ties with Germany. In fact, the strongest in Europe for, I think, 100 years. And they suddenly, so it's like, man, this is not a normal revolution. Everything seemed to be planned. And I believe he got the residency card of Monaco because, he's a wealthy man and family, so I guess Monaco is a place which they welcome you if you're wealthy. But to his surprise and my surprise, West Germany denied him.
Did you just say Monaco or Monaco? However you say
Monaco. Yeah.
Yes.
And what's even more interesting? So Reza Pahlavi, he has the residency card, but he actually doesn't have the passport, which means, this means, for example, there's many Iranians in Canada, and if you, thank God I'm not, because Canada, but if you receive a Canadian passport, apparently you need to witness, or what do you call it, like to swear in the name of the king or the queen, the monarchy of England.
Yes.
So
interesting.
Yeah, because of this, Reza Pahlavi, he didn't do that. So
he refused. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, he refused. I mean, I don't know what's exactly the rule in Germany, but usually there is such a thing that let's say you need to sell your soul,
Yeah.
And I even know one person, very, very friendly dude, very cool guy, has a family. and his father was part of the Savak. Many people know this term. Savak was basically the intelligence agency of Iran, and it only started, it wasn't anything like to creep people like the CIA or FBI or all these dirty institutions. In fact, it only got started because there was so much Marxist and communist in
You
Iran.
know, that's what I was going to say. I was watching a video last night that was talking about the events that led up to the 1979 revolution. And there was a communist party, a Marxist party in Iran that was called, I think, Today, I believe is what they were called. I forget the guy's name that was the leader, but didn't they help spearhead the action of Iran nationalizing their oil industry? Is that correct? Do you know anything about that?
Oh, that's a very subverted story. So
Is it okay?
yeah, so you're talking about Mossadegh, I think, which they say the U.S.
Yeah, that
involved.
was his name.
Yeah,
That was his name, I believe.
yeah, Mossadegh. He actually he hated Iran, and
He
his
had a nose. His nose looked fairly
yeah,
Semitic, if I
man,
will
his
say.
whole face looks weird. Like I don't know what he ate in the morning.
I believe he was. I could see him possibly being having some Semitic blood, you could say.
It can very well be, and I would later I would come in the discussion with the Semitic relations, especially with Lebanon. Iran had historically, which was all negative, by the way.
I was going
Yeah,
to say.
I would shortly say
Okay, go
Mossadegh
ahead.
was actually not democratically elected from the people because the constitution said the king actually chooses a prime minister himself, and
Okay.
actually Mossadegh did a coup d'état to basically become like his own Shah in Iran when the Shah Mohammad Reza Shah was actually on a vacation, and not for just to, I don't mean to go under the sun on a Florida beach or something. He went for for business deals, for politics. He was traveling, and this dude, this weirdo, came and did a coup d'état, but thank God he failed.
Interesting.
And he had ties to communists and Islamists and all that stuff.
There was a question in the chat. It said, or a statement actually. It said the CIA secretly supported the Ayatollah Khomeini, when he was in exile. Is this true? Did Khomeini, did he stay in Paris for a period of time?
Yeah, this is 100% true. I mean, they even
before he came back to Iran.
Yeah, he was exiled because I mean, yeah, why wouldn't you exile this guy? The Shah was so kind. Everyone says, why didn't he just execute him, right? But which that has its own reason I can come to later. But he got exiled, went to, I believe, Britain, but also Iraq, and most famously France, Paris. And in fact, the airplane that landed Khomeini into Tehran was from French Airlines.
Interesting.
And there was connections Khomeini had with the CIA, and this whole thing was staged because basically the powers behind what we think are the powers today, the real players of the chess game today, they wanted to diminish the power of Iran, and they used the weakness Iran had. And as we see, they knew they can't do it with a war. They couldn't help Saddam or some neighboring country just attack Iran to finish it. They knew they couldn't do that. So the weakness was religion, basically. And unfortunately, most people back in that day, even my relatives, perhaps 80-90% were still religious, if not strict. At least they had an affiliation to the theology, to the mullahs, which was a 1,300-year-old tradition that what these guys say is true because they know how to read the book, and all these stuff, Sharia law, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, unfortunately, Khomeini gave lots of lies. I mean, the guy was really dumb as well. He didn't even understand what the Shah was doing. But yeah, people were very emotional. They still are. I think it's if you look at history, okay, there was no internet and stuff back then. That's also a thing, but you might look at this and ask yourself, why the hell would the Iranian people cheer for this guy, for this literally pedophile, no exaggeration, for Khomeini? And I think the answer is the same answer as why people chose to, in the 2020 thing, which happened with China, right? Why did people suddenly believe all this stuff? I think it's the same human mechanism behind it, because people have become so domesticated and weak in modern civilization that they seek to authority. They want someone else to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Thus, they fall in for the lies and all that stuff.
I just pulled it up here just right now. I was reading about Mohammad Mossadegh, I believe the communist leader. He was the prime minister of Iran from 1951, I think, to 53. Let's see, it was a coup d'etat in 1953 that it was aided by the intelligence agencies of the United Kingdom, the MI6, and the CIA. The CIA branch of this sort of operation was led by a guy named Kermit Roosevelt Jr. He is a grandson of Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president of the United States.
Was Roosevelt the president in between the two war period or in the Second World War?
This is the earlier Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt was the one that was the president of during the World War II. Prior to it, from 19, I'm drawing, my brain's blanking out. I think from 1932 up until 1945 when he died in office. But yeah, that's interesting. Anyways, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent. I just thought that was interesting that there was a Roosevelt that was helping Mossadegh.
Yeah, it was the MI6 too. The MI6 was also involved in the 1979 coup d'etat. Really, I can't call it a revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically it's the British from a very long time. They were always against Iran. We were one of the only countries they failed to what you call invade or colonize. So that's why they ended up in subversion and, let's say, being smart with modern type of colonization as we see today.
Interesting. So I figured we've talked a little bit about the modern history of Iran. I wanted to go back to the distant past. It's often said that Iran is a derivative of the word Aryan. Your country of origin was is one of the few places in the Middle East that I find particularly interesting. I figured we could talk a little bit about the Median Empire, the Achaemenid Empire, the Parthians, and the Sasanians as well. Let's see. The language that is spoken in Iran it's called Farsi, right? Or Persian? Is that correct?
Yes. So very accurately, it's called Parsi or Pars. So, and Pars is the region central south of Iran, where actually Cyrus the Great and the Persian Empire came to rose. That's the area, and that language got, or dialect to say, got kind of dominated, and not by force, by the way. No one. This is one thing about Iranian languages. Everyone is allowed to speak their folk language, like their dialect in the west or east, be it Kurdish or Azeri, etc. but
Yes.
it became the like Hochdeutsch or High German, which even the Swiss and Austrians speak in business. It became the high, or what do you call it, the bureaucratic language as well.
Interesting.
And
Um,
it's yeah,
go ahead.
the word Iran, yeah, it has to do with Aryan or Arya. Actually, our term for Aryan is Aryai or Arya, and the name Iran, if it seemed it's debated where exactly it started, but it seems to be modern day Tajikistan, because there is lots of historical hints that Zarathustra, the ancient prophet, he
Yes.
came from a very mountainous area, and descriptions seem to be Tajikistan, and the name used to be Iran Vach. And this Vach is basically the same Vach that some Slavic languages use. So they,
There's some
for example,
connection there, you could say.
yeah, definitely Rustokovic, or they say Vich, but it used to be Vech or something in between. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I was wanting to talk a bit about Zarathustra, or as he's known, I believe, more commonly here in the West, Zoroaster.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about him here in a bit. But yeah, I wish I had a lot more time to prepare for this interview, because just the little bit of notes that I have here that I've gathered over the last couple of days. I'm really interested in the Achaemenid Empire, and also Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great, though, he's if I remember correctly, he is the only Gentile that was ever deemed a sort of messianic or messianic figure in the Bible, because
Yeah.
he allowed the you know who's, after he conquered the Neo Babylonian Empire, he allowed them to return to Israel. And I think I read that he had helped fund, or gave them perhaps funds to help build the second temple. Is that correct, or am I off there?
I don't know about the temple, and Iranian history is so huge and rich that there are some details I might not know. But yes, he did free them in Babylon, and but
I wonder if this was. I wonder if this was his general just philo-Semitism, or could it be perceived as a sort of anti-Semitic action? As he's just like, I just don't want them in my territory. Get them back to their homeland. Get them out of here.
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. It might be a mystery because apparently the Israelites, they all moved to what's today Jerusalem, I think.
Yes.
And that's where the term the 12 tribe thing happened, I think, because they were actually scattered, and then
Yes, I think it's, now you'll have to correct me. I'm a little rusty on this, but I think
I'm also rusty. We need to figure it out together.
the 10 tribes of Israel were, I think it split into two kingdoms. There was Israel proper, and then there was Judah. And Israel was the northern kingdom, and I think that's where the 10 tribes inhabited. And I guess that's where the 10 lost tribes came from. But Judah, the tribe of Judah, and I believe Benjamin maybe, were the two tribes that were in the southern kingdom. So yeah, it's interesting. I found the story of Cyrus's birth interesting. I'll take a second here and I'll read what I've gotten written down here.
Oh yeah, sure.
There was a Median prince. His name was Astyages, and he had a daughter by the name of Mandana. And he had a dream, and this is, I guess this is sort of mythical. I don't guess there's any way to really confirm it, but Astyages had this dream of water flooding Asia that was sprouting forth from Mandana's womb. And he decided to marry her to a Persian named Cambyses the First, because Cambyses, he was a part of the Achaemenid clan, which was in the kingdom of, I believe it was Ashan, Anshan. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He was part of the Achaemenid clan, and this is where the Achaemenid Empire, their name, came from. And the reason he married her off is because I guess there was this. He knew that that nobody that could rival him would be born from his daughter if they had Achaemenid blood. So I guess they were kind of looked down upon by the Median peoples. Well, what happened next after he marries her off? She gets pregnant, of course, with Cambyses's child. And then he has another dream. And in this dream, from Mandana's womb grows vines. And these vines take over Asia, spread all across Asia. And he was horrified by this. He became extremely paranoid. And when when he was born, his name, I believe, in Old Persian was Kurosh, but we know him best as
Kurosh.
Cyrus.
We say Kurosh. Yeah.
Yeah, he's known as Cyrus. This was in around 600 BC, of course. And what happens is Astyages kidnaps his grandson, and he has one of his advisors, a man by the name of Harpagus, to kill the baby. Now, Harpagus takes the child away, and says that, he's going to do this for Astyages. But he ends up becoming soft of heart. He doesn't want to kill this innocent child. So what he does, he ends up he goes far away and gives the baby Cyrus to a guy named Mithridates. And Mithridates was supposed to kill Cyrus, but they end up raising him as his own. And eventually, as the story goes, young Cyrus, when he's a young boy, he's playing a game that's like a wrestling match or something. And there was a nobleman, his son of the same age was there, and Cyrus just absolutely whips this kid. And this is how it ends up coming about that Cyrus and Astyages, their paths cross once again when Cyrus is probably a preteen, I would say. But yeah, anyways, I just thought that story was interesting. And I thought it was interesting learning about Cyrus and him conquering the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Like, from what I've seen, he dug a huge trench that diverted the flow of the Euphrates River. And then, of course, we hear the story of him allowing the Jews to return to Israel. Interesting people. I'm also interested in the Emperor Darius. Do you have much knowledge about him?
Yeah, well, Darius was the guy who not started, but really developed the administration in the empire.
Yeah, he set forth a system of measurements and weights, didn't he, to try to standardize things?
Yeah, and we had coins, we had a coinage and money system based on actual gold, by the way, not this fiat currency or something. And we had a very effective post system, and I think you could send a message in one day. It would travel for 300 or 400 kilometers, something like that. That's how well harmonized everything was. And I think the most, I don't know if you came across this in your research, the most important thing about the Persian Empire or the Achaemenids, we call it the Hekhamanchian, by the way, is that they were the first kingdom or empire back in this time to actually give people human rights and let go of slavery, which was a very normal form of domestication and brutality back in the day, as we saw in Egypt, Sumeria, and a big chunk of the world. And he gave human rights, and also it might sound like when we hear of human rights today, it's subverted, of course, but we have to look at it what it meant back then. We need to look at the right mindset. And he also, we had the area from what's today Tajikistan and northwest India all the way to Egypt and even Libya and even to what's today northern Greece and even
Yeah,
parts of Bulgaria.
I was about to
And
say, didn't Darius conquer part of Thrace? I believe is what that region was called.
yeah, Thrace was the name back then.
Yeah, Thracia.
I think it was him, and they made the famous bridge which crossed from Asia to Europe in what's today Turkey,
Yeah.
transporting all the troops. And we had a very strong navy too. By the way, there was even exploration going as far as to East Africa and all of Mediterranean and all these places. But what was important, you had all this area under the Iranian flag or rule. However, people were allowed to have their own religion. People were allowed to have their own culture.
Yeah,
People
I was going to say that was something that was mentioned is especially during Cyrus, his rule was that he was pretty, he was really flexible as far as allowing his conquered people to, maintain their own religious rights, you could say.
Yeah, indeed. So I think that's why it kind of gave a legacy. And actually, the American Revolution, the Independence Revolution in the late 18th century, you have how many amendments do you have? There is a lot, right?
Oh, fuck. You're asking me a constitutional question, and the only amendment I particularly care about are the first and second. I don't know if it's 25. If anybody in the chat can answer this for me, you've asked a question that I honestly don't have the answer for.
Yeah.
I think for some reason the number 25 is popping in my mind, but honestly,
Okay.
I've not paid attention.
Well,
anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so well, I think we can both agree that I know what America has turned today, but what the American constitutions are, and as you said, I also think the first freedom of speech and the second the right to have arms are the most important. Many of these constitutions were actually inspired by the Persian Empire and the human rights that they have actually designed.
Interesting. Nowadays when I hear the term human rights, I'm just like,
Yeah, I know.
But I understand what you're saying. I suppose. I mean, this was thousands of years ago, of course, and the concept was a bit different. There is 27 amendments. Thank you.
27.
Thank you, Morgan, Billy Bob, coming through for me there. I wasn't too far off. I left 2 out, I guess.
Yeah, and
yeah,
Thomas Jefferson, and who are the other founding fathers? Washington, of course, and
there's Washington, Jefferson, the prick Alexander Hamilton, which Jefferson I have conflicted feelings about. He was actually a Jacobin, but I mean I did agree with his sort of Jeffersonian view of looking out for the farmers. There was also Patrick Henry, John Hancock. There's several. I could see my cousin said Hamilton was a Jew. I could certainly see that very well being the case.
So what do you think? Because it's interesting that I mean these guys, they were academics. They had back then 250 years ago, they had access to knowledge and information from all over the world. And
I was going to say Thomas Paine is the big dog. Didymus Sumi did just mention. Yes,
yeah,
he is. Man, I've got conflicted feelings about the founding fathers. Yeah. Man, it turns out, George Washington, he was actually fairly philo-Semitic. There was a speech. I don't have access to it right this second, but he gave a speech to a group of Jews that was up in Providence, Rhode Island, and he was talking about the seed of Abraham. Yeah, the agrarian outlook. Yes, Vercingetorix. Thanks for correcting me there. But yeah, I've got mixed feelings. The only U.S. president that I have a lot of admiration for, well, I shouldn't say the only one, but it was Andrew Jackson, and he came later, and I mean he himself was, I believe he was involved in Royal Arch Freemasonry, and I'm not up to date. I don't know the amount of I don't have a good amount of information on Jackson's connections to this Royal Arch Freemasonry, but I do love Jackson because he was from Tennessee, and he was born in a place called the Waxhaws down in South Carolina, but he was raised in Tennessee. He hated the British, and he killed the First National Bank's charter. McKinley too, yeah.
I wanted to. I didn't want to go so much into it, but I wanted to mention that it's interesting that the constitutions, and I think we can. It's kind of funny because it's very sketchy, like you said, the people, the founding fathers, and which you know better than me. But funnily,
I wouldn't say that necessarily.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, but it's funny that the constitutions that they laid out, it's I mean, people are fighting to death to keep them, and especially the Second Amendment, I think. So, which you can call human rights, I guess. So, what do you think about that? That the political history of the U.S. we know how it is, but what is it that gave America this freedom? Was it this drive to just become independent from the British, or what?
Oh, this is a very complicated this is a question we could probably devote an entire stream to.
I guess.
Well, I've got really mixed feelings about this country. It's the only country I know. It's the only place I've been. I've never been to Europe or anywhere else. It seems like America was started out as a project, you could say. It was a grand experiment, you could say. There were positive things about it. There's also negative things about it, I believe, too.
Yeah.
I believe the Enlightenment had a lot to do with it. Let's see, my cousin here, he said the Magna Carta and the Scots-Irish Presbyterians is where the spirit of freedom came from. Yeah, I've heard, I forget who it was, but some renowned writer called the Ulster Scots that settled here. He called them God's own conquerors. But anyway, I think we had a great thing going whenever we had Manifest Destiny, the Western expansion. But once we achieved that, I think that harkens back to our distant Aryan past, to be honest. But once we achieved that, it seems like we've languished in a lot of ways ever since then. But anyways, man, I didn't mean to get off on this tangent talking about my country. Let's talk about your country. Let's talk about Iran.
Okay. So
I was going to say, do you want to talk a bit about the Parthian Empire? You said earlier, that was your favorite, one of your favorite periods of Persian history.
Yeah. So I would get into why it's a favorite with the Parthians, and it's called Ashkanian, by the way, in our language. But the word Parth comes from Parthi, which apparently was a region up in what's today Central Asia. Now, if you look at the Persian Empire with Cyrus and Persepolis, which unfortunately was burned down by Alexandria, and I know lots of people like Alexandria because he was a Chad and stuff, but actually he was he got, you can say, mesmerized by a girl or by a woman, I forgot the name, to burn down the palace. He was told what to do, actually. And this whole Persian thing, the empire thing, we had these palaces. We had the Persepolis or Pasargad, but so you would think we were settled, but the funny thing was that just around Persepolis, this temple, there was actually pastoral people having their cattle, their sheep, and their livestock, and living a nomadic life. So you had this variation of really rich variation of cultures in the whole land, and the elite, the royals themselves, I don't think they were nomads, but when the Parthians came, or yeah, the Parthians, Ashkanian, they came. It was about to, I think, when the Roman Republic started to become a thing. It was around that time, 200 something years before Christ. We had the Seleucids, so they had to free Iran from the Greek Seleucids, and these people, they were nomadic as hell. They came from the steppe, they came from Central Asia, and even the elites and kings, they all rode a horse. They all could, and they could also shoot while riding a
Yeah,
horse.
I've heard they were great archers and
Yeah.
great horsemen.
Yeah, Iran, you can say we had the best cavalry. In fact, I think that's why, from a military perspective, why Alexandra won, because he had a very big emphasis on the phalanx and what we would call today pikes, I guess, just these long spears which would take down cavalry. And yeah, that's one reason he could conquer the Persian Empire. But yeah, we had this cavalry culture, and we still have today. And yeah, what was also interesting was the religions. There is a lot of mystery actually about the Parthian Empire, because they were very powerful, but in fact they were not so bureaucratic as you might think. There is lots of unknowns about them. They seem to have a more oral culture. They also had freedom of religion. In fact, I think many different kings had different cultures of belief, or well, schools of belief. And yeah, and then we come to Surena, which is this name I have, and well, my picture doesn't have to do much to do with Surena, but he was a general in about 50 before Christ. And actually, I heard your talk with Nordblocks, the Bulgarian guy. He mentioned this, the Battle of Karhay.
Yeah.
This was actually led by General Surena, which was a very epic, victorious victory, because I think something like only 35 Iranians died in this battle, and something like 20,000 Romans just got demolished.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, because and these were the highest tier of cavalry in the time. They were actually in the Renaissance, what you know as the armor plate, which the French mastered. You know, the nice and these shiny one. Yeah,
Yes.
this technology was actually existing back then in Iran. We had this stuff. Armored knights and cavalry and all that.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna say earlier when I was looking into Cyrus's life, whenever he fought against the Scythian, there was a Scythian queen. I think her name was Tamaris or Tomarus. Yeah.
I think what's today Kazakhstan. It's happened somewhere there.
Yes.
I think.
And it said that they were called the Massagetae, I believe, this Scythian tribe that she led. And they had a very advanced sort of bronze armor that they would wear to battle. And it gave them an advantage, I think, against Cyrus's armies, I believe. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, yeah, that's also a known battle, although it's some debate that Cyrus got killed there, but there is no very well proof and documentation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Scythians were real Chads in battle, that's for sure. And they were a North Iranic tribe, and tribe might be a small word because they roamed in a land bigger than Iran itself.
I mean, all the way from, I guess, the Pontic steppe in the west, all the way to, Central Asia, perhaps beyond, wasn't it? It was just a huge area.
Oh, yeah. And I think this area, so Central Asia and what's today South Russia, I think many different groups of people just came and went, because simply everyone there was nomadic with horses. So the speed of movement, I think, was fast. And what's interesting that the word we call it Sakaha or Saka, what Westerners call the Scythians, and actually the word the Finnish people use, what Finland calls for parts of Germany, they use the exact same word as
Really?
I think they call it Sako, but anyway, they use the same word as they call this Iranic tribe. And well, even in English, you see Saxon basically. So in East Germany, you have a Bundesland called Saxony. You have, I think it's Lower Saxony, and there is even another Saxony-Anhalt. So
Yeah.
there seems to be a genetic connection between the people who are here and this North Iranian tribe. And what they looked like, we even have a good idea of what they looked like genetically, and it would be pretty similar to what the Tajik people are today. Those who are less, who have less admixture with East Asians, and or with the Ossetian people, which are an Iranic people today living in the Caucasus. And you can look them up how they look. So they look very, I guess you can say European, very white, but it's different from West European. It's pretty cool. And what I think happened was with this whole term of Aryan, of course, Aryan is also, when people use it, they mean it in a cultural and sophisticated manner of nobility. But from a genetic point of view, I think you basically had the Western hunter-gatherers in Europe, and you had the Yamnoya or the Aryans who came into Europe. So I think there is, of course, different theories, and people can disagree, but what it makes sense to me is that Europeans today are basically a mixture of these hunter-gatherers with the Aryans and some Neolithic farmers, more dense in the south, of course, Mediterranean. And what happened in Iran was basically the same Aryan group, but they just came and settled with the native Iranian people who were Neolithic farmers. So I think this explains why there is so much genetic similarity, but also cultural similarity, especially in the language. I think it's most evident in the language.
Interesting. It's certainly I think it's well worthwhile for us to look into the distant past because there's just so much mystery around it and different things. Let's see. I wanted to take a bit and talk about something we touched upon earlier. I want to talk about Zarathustra and Zoroastrianism. You've mentioned a lot that the Persian empires, whether it be the Achaemenid, Parthian, and what about just quickly? What about the Sasanian Empire? Were they also in this sort of?
Yeah, they were in the Aryan or non-Islamic ruling dynasty. They were a powerhouse. They had more documentations than the Pahlavi dynasty, and they ruled for a pretty long time, also 250 years, I think. And they were the big rivals of the Roman Empire. And I think, in fact, what's the northern Germanic people in Europe, which were more barbarian and they rejected the Roman law.
Yes.
Their good allies would have been the Sassanid Empire, because the Sassanid Empire also rejected the Roman law and the domestication that they wanted to impose. And we saw what happened with the Roman, I think it was back then still the Republic, with Julius Caesar, that how he conquered the Gallia, and really by the force of the sword, he changed the whole culture and made them more domesticated, unfortunately. So yeah, the Sassanids were the biggest, I guess, the biggest enemy of them, which prevented the spread into the east. And what's interesting, this is like a secret Tata moment, that the Sasanian Empire fell by Islam, but actually the Islamic forces that's with the Rashidians that they started in what's today Mecca and South Saudi Arabia. These were actually supported by the Roman Empire.
Really?
That's
interesting. That's fascinating.
Because they knew all the, some people call it as a conspiracy theory, but it starts to make sense because you see no other possibility that how can just some desert people, Arabs, which they didn't care about anything but just to move with their camels and live a very simple life. How can suddenly some crazy guy like Muhammad come and marry, which I think was staged and all well thought out, to marry the most rich woman on the Middle East, Khadija, and of course he used this wealth to spread Islam, unfortunately. And I think when you look at Muhammad's life, the prophet of Islam, or the pedophile of Islam, as I would like to say, it seems very well planned, and if he didn't have support, he would have been killed on the very beginning, but he definitely had some sort of a support. And this seemed to be the Roman Empire, and as we see, Islam spread to the parts that the Roman Empire didn't really control. And then later, and the Roman Empire itself was Christianized. So these both were the best friends, Islam and Christianity. They are both two branches of Judaism. We know that. They're working there. Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I was going to say to the audience, you are very anti-Islam, aren't you? Not
no,
at least.
Yeah, this is what my picture means. This is a Sassanid soldier. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Interesting. But I know we're switching.
I would say I'm very anti-Islamic. It really disgusts me, this thing, how it can even exist. But I'm not necessarily anti-Muslim, because I think the Muslim people, a lot of them, and I don't say they're innocent, but they have fallen victim to being born in a country or a land that doesn't let them to think freely, or to be domesticated under the name of this religion. So I think it's a similar thing to Christianity, which I also defy, and I very much dislike Christianity, especially when you look at the Old Testament. But but when you look at the people, the Christian people, they subconsciously, for them, family is more important. They have some very good values, which we actually need in this modern world.
Yeah, I can agree with that, definitely. Let's see. I was going to. I know we're jumping around quite a bit here, but
yeah,
I wanted to talk a bit about Zarathustra. If you wanted to go ahead and give your opening thoughts on Zoroastrianism, go ahead. I'm going to run to the restroom. I'll be back like within 30 seconds if you want to just continue, and I'll be right back in just a minute.
Before Zoroastrianism, it wasn't the first religion or anything. Well, Iran, I guess the whole world was a very varied and very colorful place of pagan and folkish religions. And what was more dominant and more known in Iran was Mithraism, basically. And what became later known as the cult of Mithra, which is in Iran somewhat unknown, and it has been probably deleted or censored by Islam, but it has been integrated into Zoroastrianism. In Zoroastrianism, which probably started something like 3,700 years ago, they didn't come to conquer other, or let's say, didn't come to hate and fight other pagan or folk religions in the area. In fact, they came into integrated with them, and they have something called the yasnos, and the yasnos are something like songs in Zoroastrianism.
So, hey, I'm sorry, I just made it back. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt you. So are you talking about what sort of religion there was before Zarathustra came along? Is that
Oh
what you're
yeah,
speaking about?
I talked a bit about Mithraism, which was
Yes.
probably it was like a pagan religion, and I think it was probably more similar to European pagan religions. But there is a lot of unknowns about it. It's probably censored and stuff.
Well, the Romans, they had a certain
Yeah,
sort of fascination with Mithraism, didn't they?
yeah, they did. The military did, in fact. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the Zoroastrian Mobads, which would be the like, well, not shamans, but the religious leaders, they in fact incorporated these other religions in the Iranian plateau, including Mithraism. And there are songs, as I said, they're called yasnos, which
Yes.
they are actually they are singing and hymens and stuff, which are which are devoted to Mitra, to the god of Mitra, and even other gods. And that's what also makes Zoroastrianism not exactly a monotheistic religion. It's
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It seems like if you just like take a glance at Zoroastrianism, they all say that it was the first monotheistic religion, but that's not entirely the case, is it?
no, and you're right. It's not really. And I mean, there are certain aspects to it which kind of look like a monotheistic religion, but
Yeah, Ahura
if you,
Mazda. Ahura Mazda, is that
yeah,
that's the
exactly.
supreme? Yeah.
Yeah, Ahura Mazda, yeah. There is also the concept of Asha, and I would explain this, then you'll see how where actually Abrahamic religions they stole their ideas from, and then they subverted it into their own interest to domesticate people or to remove them from reality and to basically tell them, hey, believe in this thing written down somewhere that doesn't exist instead of being connected to something that exists. And that is, for example, the idea of Asha is the world of positive energy, the world of light, and it's associated with the color of purple. We even know in physics that the color of purple is the highest frequency of colors. So somehow they subconsciously knew this. And
Is this one of the reasons why purple seems to be a color that is often associated with royalty? Perhaps. Do you
I
think?
think so. That's a good observation. I think so because it's like, yeah, it's on a higher level of consciousness. So red is very primal. Red is the color of blood.
Yes.
It's also like used for sexual attraction and things like that. While purple is more thinking more far beyond.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and yeah. So instead of heaven and hell, there was this concept of Asha and Druj. And Druj
Yes.
means,
Yes.
oh, you looked into it, cool. And Druj
Yeah.
has,
There was also an area of purgatory. It was called Hemistagon, let me see.
where is Parmistigan?
Hold on just a second. I'll pull it back up again. I'm probably butchering the term, but didn't they have also kind of like a concept not only of Asha and Bruges, but also a sort of purgatory place? I could be wrong.
Well, I'm not sure what purgatory means.
Oh,
Excuse.
purgatory is like the kind of in between heaven and hell, I guess. At least in
Oh yeah,
Catholic, it's
you're right.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's called. I'll post it in the chat. It's called let's see, Hemistagon. It's here. I'll read it real quick. It was described in the 9th century Zoroastrian text Dadastan-i Denig, or religious decisions, is what it translates to. Hemistagon or Hamistagan is a neutral place or state for the departed souls of those whose good deeds and bad deeds were equal in life. Here these souls await judgment day. Meanwhile, those who did mostly good experience, well, this is grammatically a little off here. Let me see. They suffer from torment, which I guess that is Druge and Asha. You know, if you did good in life, you went to Asha. If you did evil things, you suffered from Druge. But it can be compared. It can be compared to the concept of Roman Catholic purgatory, basically.
Oh,
but
okay.
anyway, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to.
No, that was good to know. Thanks. So yeah, that's the thing. The concept of Osha and Rouge, or I see it more as these cloud energies or these worlds of energy, rather than like a prison or this room they made it for you. Like, oh hey, here's heaven, and like you did this, you obeyed us, instead of being a free man. So we now reward you with 72 wives and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and you're also given, you're also given that you haven't achieved it. That's also how I see it as domestication. You haven't like achieved these results by yourself. While in Asha and Rouge, it's basically that you're after your death, your energy, your spirit, which I definitely think there is some electromagnetic aspect to it. It goes to connect with this positive or negative world. And when people die, we think of the energy they had, what they gave us, what they did for us, and not the body. So I think there's something to that. And there is also many things they stole, like Islam stole. There is the concept of the days of creation. I forgot how that connected, but there is a lot of stuff that they basically stole. The heaven, and there is even the descriptions of heaven in Islam. And if you look at it, it looks exactly like the descriptions of an underground world, like a cave world, which was mentioned in Iranian mythology. And the Iranian mythology, the Shahnameh, or the Epic of Kings, it talks about the world at the creation, and it's nothing like Genesis or something. It's in a much more harmonic and beautiful way mentioned. Yeah, so there's just a lot of things and I don't remember everything, but and it can definitely be its own topic for the future.
I was going to say, looking back, prior to Zoroastrianism, I'm asking you this question. From what I understand, looking back at our distant, what you could say, Indo-Iranic or Indo-European ancestors, and I mean, this is, I believe, reflected in our native European religions. And also, I believe it's reflected too in what you could say Hinduism. Their view of the universe was more cyclical. You could say everything is in a cycle. Was Zoroastrianism, wasn't it a sort of deviation from this, where it looked at it it looked at the universe in more of a linear sense? Is this true?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, but I was just curious because, well, I mean, it's like, they talk about, Druge and Asha, and
but
anyway, go ahead.
I know. So we know the Abrahamic religions are very linear, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think that was an influence that they had maybe perhaps taken from Zoroastrianism.
Perhaps. However, if they did, then I think they took it to an extreme, because they say this is like the start of the world, the start of creation of man, and then like the end, which in Christianity would be the resurrection of Jesus, or in Islam would be its own thing. And then like, hey, that's the end, and that's the end of the story. Boring, right? But I don't know of such thing in Zoroastrianism.
Interesting. Okay. What's your overall opinion of Zoroastrianism? I know you're not you detest Islam, but what's your opinion on Zoroastrianism? Do you think it was a positive thing or perhaps a negative thing? I'm just asking your opinion here.
A short answer, I would say it's interesting. I find it somewhat positive. But ideally, I'm more aligned to like paganism and direct connection to the land, and odalism. And I know I don't have like Nordic ancestry or something, but I think that's the whole problem with modern society. We have lost so much information and spirituality. Then maybe Mithraism. I mean, many people suspect that Mithraism in Iran was very similar to European paganism, just in its own form, of course. So if I don't know if if Thor, what
I was about to say, I know I've got a book here. I think it was Paganism Explained that Varg had written. It's dedicated primarily to Mithraism. It's probably been 3 or 4 years since I've read that book, though.
Oh wait, yeah. Also, Marie Cachet, Varg's wife, she talks a lot about this, the cult of the Sheber, and she talks about Mithraism too. But unfortunately, I haven't read her book. But I think definitely they will have an interesting take on that. I guess so. And yeah, I myself, I believe this is how I not only I look at Zoroastrianism, but also Iran. That, for example, in Europe, especially North Europe, you are more isolated from civilization. It's a more cold region,
Harsher environment, yes.
harsher environment, and I think not densely populated, probably pretty sparse, and it's difficult to farm there compared to the Mediterranean or the Middle East. I think what happened in Iran was that they just people came to the realization of this reality that, hey, we have become civilized. We have established a life with farming, and not only farming, by the way. As I said, there was also nomadics, there was hunting as well. So there was a wildlife as well. However, there had to be a civilization because the whole region is filled with competition, right? So you have even the Indians had a civilization to the east. You had the Sumerians, the Egyptians, Mediterranean, etc. So I think what Zoroastrianism realized, just my naive idea, is that let's make it the right way. Let's have this civilization do it the right way that doesn't damage our dignity and doesn't degenerate us. And what you saw in the Roman Empire, especially then later with Christianity and stuff, was just pure degeneration. So I don't know what you think about it, but this is just what I think about it, and perhaps this is what also Iran Shah, or the Iranian civilization, meant, the Persian Empire. Maybe it was this realization that we have these civilizations here in the Middle East, this fertile area, which was long ago also. It was also in the Bronze Age. So this started from almost 5,000 years ago, right? With the Medians, Sumerians, and it doesn't seem to go away. I think we also see this today. I think Varg also mentioned this. If there would be a collapse, right? Like a total collapse, there would be no more electricity, no more industrial revolution. Do you think we would stay as hunter-gatherers, like living, fishing and hunting life? No, I get it's possible, but it's also very likely that civilization would come back. Someone would some
If that's
community.
yeah, that's a good point. If there was some sort of collapse, and myself, I've kind of toned it back a bit on my views about some sort of collapse. Uh, I think, unfortunately, that civilization, at least as we see it today, I think it's more resilient than we give it credit for. Of course, it is there is a fragility to it all, of course, but it is also, I think, a little
Right.
more resilient. It's able to take more damage than perhaps we originally thought. Now, I've kind of quit looking forward to this sort of collapse because I think here in America, what we are going to do is we are just going to limp on and struggle on. I think we're going to see. Now, I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not into fortune telling or anything. I mean, hell,
Yeah.
I do think we will see some. I think the decline will be noticeable. I mean, I'm a millennial. I was born right smack in the middle of the millennial generation. And I think it's going to be a noticeable decline, what we're going to see over the rest of my lifetime, however long that may be. But, where was I going with this? I knew I would.
With what do you think about collapse and the cycle of civilization?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. That primed me there. I was going to say, if there was a sort of collapse, it wouldn't be chaos for long because, there's a power vacuum. There's
Right.
a power vacuum, and something is going to fill that vacuum. It's only going to stay chaotic for so long. Basically, is what I was just going with that. But anyways, let's see. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes. I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk a few minutes about life in Iran today. Like,
Okay.
yeah, you go there to visit sometimes, don't you?
Well, I did until I really wanted to go like maybe this spring soon, but well, that's a good answer to your question. But I'm afraid I can't, or I can. There is the ability, but I will definitely not do it because I've been involved in political activity against the terrorist Islamic regime of Iran, like many do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to demonstrations and stuff because I'm not a guy to. I mean, I was born in the West. Actually, I'm a second generation Iranian. Although I'm from both sides Iranian, by the way, so I'm fully Iranian.
Yes.
But if I go back to Iran, it's a problem because I've been into demonstrations, and if they have you on like camera or something, then you don't know. Yeah, you're playing a gamble. So if you enter the airport, and this has happened to some people, by the way, the news spread around that they would arrest you, you will get into problems. And I also thought, man, why would I visit my country, which is in shambles? It's occupied, and to be honest, I don't know what you think. You might think differently, but I think it's a much more sad occupation, much more harsh occupation than what like Europe is under or America is under, because it's very direct. It's I mean, they would put you to the point of the gun. They would put you to jail. There's
make you face the wall, right? Make you dig a trench, face the wall, right?
Yeah, there is like 18,000 Iranians right now in prison or in arrestment since the demonstrations, simply because.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about those demonstrations. Are they still going on? I mean, it's months back. I remember seeing that there were the news of all these demonstrations. I guess were they like feminist demonstrations, perhaps fighting against Sharia, or what? What was the context? What led to these demonstrations? Do you believe?
So it is a genuine, the one in Iran for sure. It's a genuine demonstration or revolution, really. I would call it a revolution because it's not just people going in the streets with some banners saying, "Hey, we want an end to this corruption," or whatever. No, it's people going and say, "We don't want any modification. We don't want to fix this. We want you all gone."
The
And
theocracy. The
yeah, the
theocracy.
theocracy, and we want this Islamic shithole regime to just go get lost or to kill, or I mean to be killed, to be done with. And they would chant Marg bar Khamenei, for example. So Khamenei is the supreme leader, and Marg bar means death to Khamenei. People, even young girls, they would go out in the streets and shout this. They would raise their voice about this because they know it's either these people, this regime, either has to go. We need to take them out, or they're gonna stay as long as they want to. There is no other option because this is how the 1979 Islamic coup d'etat was planned. This is what we know what they planned, why they
You can
planned it.
say Jews. It doesn't bother me. I
Yeah,
don't
well,
think you'll get taken down for that.
yeah, well, I don't know what YouTube would do.
I'll
Uh,
say it. It's up to you. I appreciate it though.
yeah,
I wanted to say real quick. Excuse me. I wanted to say.
there
Do
is a
you? Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Shall I say about the feminist thing?
Yes. Yes. Go ahead. What were you going
Okay,
to say?
so I think personally that Mahsa Amini, she might have also died from the quack scene, the injection thing.
Yes.
And I mean, we don't know because they don't give any concrete information. But anyway, rather, in any case, if she was killed directly by the, Sharia law police force or this experimental thing, in both cases, definitely the fucking regime is responsible for this death. Then,
Yes.
then why not to go and demonstrate over this? And this was only a spark. This is not the main reason why we do this. This is one out of thousands of cases of crime and corruption why people want this to end. And it's not only, it doesn't mean something for us. This would also make the whole region more safe. And yeah, so that's a feminist thing. Some people think it's just feminism. No, although yes,
It's
of course, in
deeper.
the West,
There's other issues, of course, right?
yeah, exactly. There's people who are hijacking the revolution. So there's even, I mean, I even saw, you can go and see videos of the demonstrations outside of Iran in like Germany or the US. You would have these LGBTQ flags, and they're gonna say like, they're gonna say the problem is something else. They're gonna deviate it basically because we have a whole massive economic problem. Not only a woman problem,
Yeah.
but these feminists and such, they just want to focus on, oh hey, I want to be able to sleep with the same gender under the bed, which in Iran, the people in Iran, they don't give a shit about this issue. So you're not being a good representative if these people who are doing it outside. They're not a representative of uh, the people in Iran. However, the most people, they don't really care about that issue. The demonstrators, they just want the regime gone. And some of them, like me, we know what we want. We not only want it gone. We don't only want an Islamic regime gone, but we want our monarchy back. Our 2,581-year-old Aryan kingdom and monarchy back. We know what we want because we know from experience and history that this is what benefits not only us but also the region, for to have a positive, really, to bring positive energy back to this country and region.
Interesting. I wanted to ask. I just wanted to pose this question to you. Do you think that this sort of Islamic fundamentalist theocracy, do you think it has kind of shielded Iran from some of the degeneracy of the West, or is this something that is just a misconception?
What do you mean shielded? Like,
It's protected. It's protected
oh,
Iran,
okay, yeah,
the
yeah.
culture of Iran, from a lot of the degeneracy that we see here in the Western
No, well,
countries.
that's what they claim they do, but in practice, it's such a failure because I think, in fact, it made people obsessed that, oh, for example, in schools, you have men and women who are separated, right?
Yeah,
But this is such a, like, I mean, this is not controlling against or resisting Western degeneracy anymore. It's just making people mentally ill. They haven't, like, you grow up until you're like in your 20s and stuff, and only in university again you have men and women who are back together, but the whole time in the school period you only learn to be with your own same age group and also same gender. I don't find that natural. I don't think in a tribal community, you
that's
know.
right. Yeah, I see
Yeah,
what you're saying. I
yeah.
understand.
So they make people obsessed, and I just give an example of our how my time in school was in Iran. Like, so you have this whole vacuum of, you reach puberty,
Yeah,
and then yeah, you have all this sexual energy all of a sudden, and
yeah,
you wonder what to do with it, right? And
yes,
then, unfortunately, we don't live like the past that, okay, you actually become 15 or 16, then you need to go and actually, go and get resources and wealth and then soon form a family. No, you're just stuck in this like boring school system, which is just like the West, by the
and
way.
you're just in there with a bunch of dudes, ain't you? There's no
Yeah,
women, there's no girls your age around, and dude, I couldn't
yeah,
imagine that. That's pretty depressing.
yeah. I mean, now people are more clever, but back before, yeah, it's that, and then what comes above that is pornography. And
Yeah,
this just makes a whole shit show. I mean, it's very bad what I've seen. Like, people, and it didn't used to be like that, because simply porn was not accessible maybe 30 years ago. But in my time, so in the, like, I guess, uh, yeah, let's say 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago in high schools, right? Like, you had all these kids in school sending degenerate videos and all this stuff together in the school bus, right?
yeah.
And I don't actually, to be honest, I don't really see this, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really get this impression in Western countries because people have a
I think
chance.
I think we're inundated with it more over here, and it's kind of desensitized, I guess you could say, in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
because at least you guys, like, you have the chance to go and learn to, be with the other gender, to have a partner, right?
yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you this real quickly. This is something I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Do the people of Iran have as is drugs and narcotics? Is it as huge of a problem in Iran as it is here in the West? I mean, Appalachia here, it's pretty sad what's going on. Fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, all these things. Is there problems like that in Iran? Is it as pronounced as it is here? Would you imagine, or is it something that you don't see all that often?
Oh, good question. Well, we are probably good rivals with the US, I would say, because I've seen, like, it's now a hobby of me to watch videos from California with all these homeless people with needles on the ground, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Well, hell, listen to this, man. There is. Let's see. Here in May, I'm going to go on a trip. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to go back home where I'm from for a week up in the mountains, and
in North Tennessee, right?
yeah, Northeast Tennessee, Northwest North Carolina. But the Appalachian Trail, it runs just maybe 3/4 of a mile from the back end of my property line back there. But
Right.
We're going to go, me and my mom's husband, we're going to go on a camping trip. We're going to walk up the mountains. We're going to be gone for maybe a day or two. But she lives over on the North Carolina side of the mountain. And there is this old red barn that's right off the Appalachian Trail. It's a shelter. They've got picnic tables there and everything. And I seen an article that was in the paper the other day. It was actually in the Asheville Times. I just seen it online. But the Appalachian Trail, the people that run it, they're going to tear down this old red barn. It was built in 1975. Yet the Asheville Citizen Times does not mention. They just say that it was built, 1975 is almost 50 years ago. That barn, I've been to that barn many a times when I was in my youth. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Vercingetorix. You've been there. I've been to that barn many a times in my youth. I had some friends over there it's Roaring Creek is the name of the place. It's a really remote part of Appalachia, just across the mountain from where I was raised. But we went up there. We would go up there, drink some beer, and just hang out, But my mom's husband the other day told me the real reason that they're tearing that barn down is because there's goddamn syringes and needles laying fucking everywhere. And I mean, I haven't been to that barn in probably about 10 years. It's probably been about 10 years. But I mean, you see that same fucking shit happening here in the middle of nowhere in Appalachia.
Wow.
It's fucking depressing. But anyways, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
I think the U.S. is has a much worse drug problem than Europe, for example, and Iran definitely has a worse problem than Europe.
Really?
Yeah,
See,
and
I was going to say I've watched shows before about how the trafficking of like heroin and stuff through Iran was a dangerous and profitable business for perhaps these cartels and criminals that did so.
Yeah, they bring I think something like just 70 or 80% of all the drugs in the world, or specific drugs, they just pass from certain places in Afghanistan. And
there was also the Golden Triangle, as they called it, during the Vietnam War. A lot of opium and heroin was produced in Southeast Asia. A ton of it's been produced in Afghanistan. I don't know if a lot of opium poppies are grown in Iran. I'm sure they would.
Yeah, there would be a few, but yeah, they mainly get it from Afghanistan, and it unfortunately opium is the biggest problem in the drug question in Iran, and it is so bad that a doctor told me it in a medium-sized city, right? Which was very religious too, by the way. In Iran, there was. This is close to Isfahan, by the way. So in the center of Iran, in one of the smaller cities, the doctor's patients, 50% of them were definitely addicted to something. And the doctor's estimation was that 25% of everyone in the city at least sometimes does drugs, and most probably opium. So yeah. I don't know if I think definitely 25 is a huge number. This city is worse than other cities, but yeah, especially I think the more you go to the east, like areas like Kerman, Khorasan, which are close to Afghanistan, yeah, drugs are a problem. Now, what's more important?
I have heard Russia has a terrible drug problem among its youth. I know years ago I remember watching a documentary about this. I think it's called decamorphine, but the street name for it was crocodile. Dude, this shit is absolute poison. These people would look like zombies, and it's not decamorphine. It was something similar to heroin, and I could be mispronouncing that. This is I seen this documentary like 10 years ago, but it's not the drug itself. I mean, of course it isn't good for you, but it's the methods they use to process this crocodile And the reason they call it crocodile is, man, these people's skin, dude, the people's skin would just start rotting. I mean, it was
What
horrifying.
the,
It was awful.
like
And
zombies in real life?
I mean,
guess.
yeah, literally. They showed pictures of some of the youth there that had been on this shit for just like a couple of years, man, and like they had sores all over them. Like, I mean, it was just, and it's not the actual drug that they want to get high. It's all the poison that they make to in order to process and to concoct this drug. You get all these wild different types of acids and God fucking knows what else, you know. I mean, it's just it was awful. Thankfully, that's something I've never seen here in the United States. But still,
Yeah.
you know.
Now the drugs are themselves one thing. Do you hear me, by the way? Because sometimes I have a bug.
Yeah, you're coming in
Okay.
good and clear.
It's also the question who brings in these drugs. Like, it can't just, you know, I don't know how much of a thing drugs were back in the day. We had the opium wars in China, of course.
Yeah, the British helped promote that, I believe, didn't they?
Yeah, which messed up China big time.
The Sassoon family as well, the Jews.
Oh, I don't know about that. That would be a good topic. You also looked into drugs in the Washington state you sent me. I didn't have a chance to look into it yet, but that's very.
Oh shit! Hello. Well, guys, I think we've lost Surena. Maybe he'll come back here in just a second. Give me just a minute, guys. Let me send him a message. I apologize for this, guys. I don't know what just happened. Give me just a second. See what he says. Huh. I don't know what happened to him. Let me see. I'm trying to message him on Telegram, but he hasn't seen it yet. This is strange. I've never had a guest just drop off like that. No, let's hope it ain't some sort of airstrike attack, Mr. O'Well. I hope not. What the hell's it? Okay, he just messaged me on Telegram. Give me just a minute, guys. I find he just made contact. Should be back here in just a second. Yeah, we need some intermission music. Absolutely, Dirty Newbie. Well, apparently I'm still live. I'm still going. He just got kicked off for some reason. Let me send him. I'm gonna send him the link again to see if he can hop back on. We've just got a few minutes left anyway. I've got to close this out here in just a few minutes. I need me a glass of raw milk. Need some raw milk. Oh, here he is. Let's see. Hey. Hey, man, people were wondering where you were going, man. Somebody said there was a damn airstrike that might have hit you. Can you hear me?
No, I don't know what happened, honestly, man. I know sometimes, I think this what happens. Sometimes my internet disconnects for like a few seconds, and it didn't connect back to our voice chat. I think that's what happened.
Okay. I didn't know what had happened. I'd never just dropped a guest randomly like that. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
man. I was
How
gonna
long was I gone? How long was I
uh,
gone?
just a minute or two. You wasn't gone long.
Okay. Okay, good. So, till where did I speak?
We were talking about the drug problem, I believe, in Iran.
Yeah. Yeah, so did I say the Republican guards are the ones who are importing drugs into Iran actually?
Oh, so dude, I mean, this is exactly what happens here in America, man.
Yeah.
I believe the CIA, the CIA, it was a big scandal back in the 1980s, the Iran Contra affair. Man, our governments, they put up this front like they're actually fighting, the drug war and all this shit.
Right.
Those fucking cocksuckers are the one that's got such a huge hand in bringing the shit in. It's just
Was this also the case with Pablo Escobar and Colombia in the 80s?
it was, I think, involved in the periphery. I'd have to look at all that stuff again. Let me see.
That
But
thing would
anyway,
take its own stream for sure. I'm sure.
yeah, I was going to say, what were you saying about the Republican Guard there? You think they'd
So
also bring in the opium and heroin?
yeah, they bring in all the drugs, especially from Afghanistan. In fact, they are the Iranian government. I shouldn't say Iranian. The anti-Iranian government is
Yeah.
very good friends with the Taliban in Afghanistan, with all these Islamic groups, and Afghanistan is known for drugs. They just do it so much because also their religion, like the religious leaders, apparently they don't say anything against it. They want it to be that way. Anyway, the Republican Guards imported, and it's not even a secret because Ahmadinejad, one of the presidents, I
That's
think.
what that was actually a question I wanted to ask you here shortly. Was what was your thoughts on Mahmoud Ahmadinejad? Um, he is vilified here in the West, but I know a few years ago, just one evening, I kind of binge watched several of his interviews, and honestly,
Uh,
I found him to be an appealing sort of figure. I thought he was interesting what he had to say and his thoughts. But what is I want to know what your opinion is
so
on
yeah,
Ahmadinejad.
yeah, he has a very interesting interview. He That's the thing. He was a populist, so he said some things to really just attract people, which had some truth in it. Some of the stuff he said, and this thing he talked about, the thing that happened in Germany. He talked about that as well. Um, but what's funny is that actually he himself is a small hat. he
Really? Are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah, because people figured out there was a picture of his passport or ID or something, and then people looked up the family name, and they chased it up and found out it links with the small hat people. And this explains perfectly why he looks so goddamn ugly. I have seen no Iranian looking like this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and economically, he demolished the country. I mean, he sold our country to China, basically. So,
Really?
lots of factories, industry shut down. Cheap garbage stuff from China came in. I don't know. It just so many problems. It was just terrible. Also,
Was he
became more harsh, politically more harsh. There was no room to speak, nothing. People would go to jail. Yeah.
interesting? I'm always interested in hearing people's perspectives on things like that have had to deal with this sort of thing before. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Let's see. There was a question back here. We got
In
a
the street.
few in the chat. I wanted to ask you. This question was asked while we were while we got disconnected.
Yeah.
My friend Hans Hugren asks, so there are some Iranians that want the Shah back. Interesting. Was it
Yeah.
the Mongols under Genghis Khan that were responsible for the fall of that empire? Or I think he means what?
Which
I think he means like whenever Genghis Khan was around
Yeah.
back in the 1200s. What was the government of Persia? You could say, was there an empire
Oh,
then? It was an Islamic caliphate, wasn't it?
yeah, there was after Islam, you had many different kingdoms in Iran. Almost none of them were as prosperous as the pre-Islamic ones, except Pahlavi, which is the one we
That
talked
was a
about.
lot. They got a lot of oil money, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. But not only money, we also that's later history. I'll answer his question. It was a Khwarezmian or Khwarezmian Empire when the Mongols came,
Okay.
and yeah, unfortunately they did conquer Iran. However, interestingly, the very first battle which the Mongols lost was lost against us, which was done by the general leading the Iranians, and this battle was Javad or Jalal Kharazmi, which he dragged the Mongols coming all the way to the Sand River in what's today Pakistan, and exhausting them, and basically they couldn't come in come in more further. So this was the first defeat the Mongols had actually, and I would like to also there's 2 points I have to make about the Mongols. First is actually they only attacked when they were very sure they would win. So I
They
think
were
it's a
very selective, right?
yeah,
Very
exactly.
selective.
They were not like this brave necessarily these brave chads who would just like fighting odds like 1 against 10 or something, like
They
it
were
wasn't like that.
intelligent about it. They were
Yeah,
intelligent.
I think they definitely were clever. I mean, they used the Chinese engineers, or wherever they went, they used the engineers to build the stuff they have to build, siege crafts,
Yeah.
catapults. Yeah. And the
Battering
second point I
rams.
want to make about the Mongols is that you can't say it was even better times to live back then, because first of all, you had the chance to fight against your enemy because you could have weapons, right? Second of all, they didn't dictate their culture, and they wouldn't eradicate your heritage, your cultural heritage. And in fact, when they came into Iran, they adopted the Persian and Iranian culture and languages, and
They
they
also.
even yeah,
I mean, that was interesting that Hans had asked this question, because I thought earlier, I thought of a parallel when you were talking about how, say, Cyrus or Darius or some of these, the leaders of the Parthian Empire, they were kind of allowed people the freedom of religious expression, and that's what
yeah,
I've read. That's what I've read about Genghis Khan too. Is that when he conquered an area, he didn't really care about whatever religion it was that
yeah,
the natives practiced.
yeah, exactly, yeah, and so yeah, that's why I would have mixed feelings towards them, and maybe I would see the Mongols as a challenge, that you should always be prepared for something crazy. I
Yeah,
think that was a good lesson for pretty much the whole world, except, well, they went as far as Poland and Hungary, I think, not further. And yeah, so also genetically, from what I read, from what I researched, they didn't eradicate the people of every city, actually.
yeah,
They were
yeah.
selective. So I also think this is also some sort of weird Eastern propaganda that they say, oh, like 1 in every 10 people is their ancestor goes back to Genghis Khan. I think this is bullshit, because
Interesting.
if you look at the genetic what do you call it, influx, the numbers in Iran, for example, we have only 7 to 8% of East Asian admixture, and this is contrary to what people think, because and we only have 2% Arab admixture, and for the rest, basically there is, I think, 0.5% of Indian, because we're close to India, but for the rest, 90% we are pure Iranian. We are 90% the same as we were. And people, some people who really haven't studied anything, they just think, oh, because we were under Islamic rule, then we should have been genetically also Arabized. But this is not true. History doesn't always work like that. In fact, I think in Arabic regions there was more Arabic genetic influence or invasion, but when you go more beyond, Islam actually spread in bureaucratic means, just like we see today with America, for example, and westernization of the world. It's not like invasion, it's bureaucratic. This is how Islam worked. They would basically give money to religious leaders to convert to Islam, or threaten them with something. And when the leader does that, then generation by generation, people follow suit. I also want to say this, that this opened up a good story now, because Iran stood its ground for a really long time. We kept our language. We're the only country in this region which kept this ancient language. If you look at Iraq, they don't have Assyrian anymore. They don't have Ashurian or Assyrian anymore. Assyrian, sorry. We kept that stuff, and also it took us a very long time to actually become Muslim, and we are not good Muslims. We fucking don't do it.
It is the Shia Muslim.
I mean, Shia is actually worse than Sunni. That's a whole other discussion, but we are not practicing, most Iranians are not practicing Muslims, especially today. Maybe 10% are really, 10 or 20%. And those are the brain dead ones for sure. And just until it's said, for example, Nader Shah, people should look him up. And he was killed by the British spies, by the way. Nader Shah, one very mighty king, something like 50 years before Napoleon, right? Or longer before him. Nader Shah actually had the army. So this is in 1730, I think. His army consisted also of Zoroastrians and even people with different folk religions and Christians. It wasn't only Muslims. And this is a long time after. This is almost 1,100 years after the start of Islam. We still had Zoroastrians in Iran. And it took, apparently, the next dynasty, the two dynasties after that, the Qajar dynasty, they were the ones who, with the help of Lebanese, this is a Semitic connection. Lebanon is one of the Shia regions in the world. And since 500 years ago, the Lebanese theologists, clergy, they came into Iran with the Safavid Empire. And from that point on, that is where the real Islamization of Iran started to happen, apparently. And this is why still to this day, the regime today in Iran is friends with Syria and Yemen and Lebanon because of this Shia connection. And it's only, and it's just another side of globalization, 100%. And so you don't have small hats directly controlling what's happening in Iran. They do it indirectly because they have these chess pieces already from Lebanon, from 500 years ago. So that's what they did. And they just use this religious force and weapon really against Iran. They didn't need to. What we see with Germany, for example, with what happened in the war, they didn't need to do this direct invasion of the Soviet Union or America. They just, yeah, they just sparked the fire.
Subverted over time. Subverted it
Yeah,
over time. Very nice.
yeah, and because of your audience, they might think that they would also ask themselves, what about Westernization in Iran? Yes, that's definitely a problem. In fact, in the time of the Shah, I
That's
would
one of the
say,
things that led to the Islamic Revolution, wasn't it? Was the
yeah,
worry of
although,
the fear of being Americanized.
well, that's what they say. I honestly don't think we were getting Americanized. There was certainly some influence, but I would say that's inevitable.
Yeah.
But we were the king Muhammad Reza Shah. He had this that's why he set up this very famous party celebration of it was called the 2,500-year-old celebration, which he invited, I think, kings and presidents from 70 countries all around the world to Iran. And this picture you see of me, right, with these the
Different
cavalry.
figures. Yeah.
Yeah. These are ancient. Also, no, not medieval. These are not medieval, but these are ancient Iranian forces, military forces, units with their costumes. What he did was basically he did a cultural Iranian renaissance. So he not only wanted to become a powerful military country and to be competitive with the rest of the world, he but he was very conscious that he shouldn't forget Iran shouldn't forget its roots. That's why he through this through he set up this celebration, and there was this huge march of thousands of Iranians which practice for this day to dress in ancient Iranian clothes from the very start, from Cyrus, from all the way to modern Iran. And there was cultural movements as well with the first Shah. So Reza Shah actually he hated the British. So that's one thing we and we and Americans have in common, and Irish. He wanted to get rid of the British colonizing influence in the Middle East. So he
Yeah.
brought in not only German engineers, he also brought in like cultural figures, or what would you call cultural scientists and archaeologists.
Influencers, you could say, and archaeologists. Yeah.
Yeah, archaeologists and
Academics.
yeah, academics, exactly. So actually, with the Shah, with the father, right, with Reza Shah, this
Yeah.
archaeological things,
There.
with the help of Germany, I think even Austria and other European countries, this started to happen. Even Adolf Hitler, he voluntarily sent some people to for the interests of curiosity of Germany. They even sent some people to study Iran's history because it was just so fascinating with
Yeah.
what
Absolutely.
they, yeah. And
Absolutely.
so they started that, and also a cultural renaissance, for example, talking about all of this in the schools. So if you're a student, you would get to know about this along with from the Islamic tradition, so that people would have the ability. The information was there that you're not a 1,300-year-old serving Muslim. No, that's not the real you. You have roots that go way far back.
Further back. Further back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely. And we knew the archaeology and all. It proved that our roots even go more further back than Cyrus. Cyrus was just the start of the huge empire, but before that
Yeah.
we had.
It goes even further back. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It would go back definitely to the Aryans, or even the Median. Medians and
Even before,
Elamites. Sorry, what?
I said even beforehand, back to, you could say, primitive man, whichever
Yeah,
group is
definitely.
there.
Oh, definitely. And there was the
Um,
Elamites too, and the primitive man you mentioned. There was a there is Neanderthal. So
yeah,
that's important. Not Homo sapien, as globalists like to say, but Neanderthal bones were discovered in what's today the Alborz region of Iran, which is close to Tehran, not so far from Tehran. And they date as far back to 75,000 years old.
very nice. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Uh, that's a good thing to hear. There's so much history there.
yeah,
I was about. Let's see. We've been going for 2 hours and 5
hours.
minutes. I was about to close it out. Is there? I've been putting the link to your Telegram channel
Oh,
in the
thanks.
chat periodically. Is there any parting thoughts? I would like to say too. I would love to have you on again here sometime in the future to perhaps
Oh,
do
yeah,
a deeper, perhaps to do more of a specific. We'll pick a certain
yeah.
specific part of Iranian history and perhaps do a deep dive into it. So I'd love to have you on again here sometime in the future.
Oh, me too. We had so
It's
little. It's
it's
a
it's
massive.
interesting. It's
Yeah,
really
it's so much.
interesting.
It's so much, and yeah, I know I was all over the place because I don't know what to cover.
Oh, I was too. I was too, man. This is kind of how I do my streams on such a broad topic. I just figure we'll talk about
Yeah,
whatever comes to mind. But in the future, we'll do something that's a bit more focused. You could say.
yeah.
I'll be a bit more prepared.
So yeah, I do have my bullet points. There are some stuff I would like to be. I want to be sure I say
Okay,
before the end.
go ahead.
So in the I would talk about the role of Iran in the two world wars. In the First World War, well, we know what happened in Europe, which was really a mashup, like bloodbath between European countries, for really no good reason. Um, now, Britain did have quite some control over Iran, especially in the military sector, and this is before I'm talking about World War One, and this is before Reza Shah. This is before the Pahlavi dynasty. This was the Qajar dynasty, which were very corrupt. They also seem to have non-Iranic roots or heritage. They seem to be more Turkic, or partially at least. Now, in World War One, because the British had control, they did a famine. They did not much people know about this. They did an artificial famine, just like Holodomor of the Soviet Union in Iran, and estimated 10 million people simply perished to death in Iran.
Wow,
And
that's
yeah,
devastating.
and
That's
this is
awful.
that. Yeah, it's just the worst. And I think probably all the because they confiscated all the wheat and grains and all the food, and I think they might have used it to fuel the war. I would find that very likely because they did this. We know they did this with India in the Second World War. That
Yeah.
Britain was low on food resources, and I think your audience they know quite a bit about the world wars. I think this is valuable to know because they did so much cheating. This was such an inhumane war against the central powers of the Germanic powers and Austria-Hungary. And in the Second World War, Iran. By the way, I forgot to say, in the First World War, Iran was neutral. We didn't want to do anything. We had nothing to do with the war, but we got involved like this by force. In the Second World War, again, Iran's, which was Reza Shah at this time, Reza Shah declared neutrality. However, as I mentioned earlier, Reza Shah was in fact in favor of the Germanic mindset of engineering and craft, and basically he preferred. Well, he knew that Iran needs to have some military and technological advancements. So he chose the Germans, the Czechoslovakian, Austrians. I don't know about Austrians, but definitely the Germans. So we had something like 1,500 German engineers in Iran, and he kicked out the British engineers, or most of them, had the Germans. The war starts. Reza Shah declares neutrality. Now, Britain and the Soviet Union, they don't like this.
Yeah.
If you look at the map of Iran, right?
Yeah.
We are pretty much in the center of the world. So to the
You
east,
could say yes.
yeah, which brings a lot of responsibilities and drama.
That's
If you
true.
look at the Persian Gulf, yeah, so the British had control of the Persian Gulf, which connects basically to the Indian Ocean and the rest of the world. And then if you cross Iran from south to north, you get to the Caspian Sea. And from the Caspian Sea, you get to the Soviet Union, or Russia today, right?
Yeah.
Now, all military or World War II nerds know about this, that the Allies were pumping so much resources into the Soviet Union, especially the first phase of the war. But it was difficult for them, right? And without this aid and land lease, which America and Britain gave to the Soviet Union, Union would definitely have collapsed. Now, because of German engineers in Iran, Britain did put pressure on Iran and said, we don't accept your neutrality unless you kick out the German engineers. The Reza Shah refused, but after so much pressure, he only fired 60 engineers out of 1,000 something. This didn't satisfy Britain, so in 1941, the Soviet Union and Britain, they break the neutrality statement, and they attack Iran from both sides. The Soviet Union from the north, Britain from the south.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I was about to say this is fascinating because this is something that a lot of people, I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah, I'm glad I brought it up.
Absolutely.
Many Iranians don't know about it too. And what? So I didn't finish. Sorry. What happened? Unfortunately, the Iranian military lost to the Soviets and the British because we only had a 50-year-old military. Really, we didn't have time to basically maturize our military to become powerful. Reza Shah didn't have enough time, simply. That's why we were using German engineers to basically get to a competitive level. When Iran lost, it wasn't a matter of few days. The Second World War, what happened? We had a railway from south going to the north. This was made before, in the 30s or so. And Britain started to increase its land lease. It became much more easier. So something like 20 to 30% of all Soviet supplies were coming through Iran, a land which declared neutrality, but the Allies disrespected this neutrality.
Just abused it, yeah.
Yeah, and this was exactly in a crucial time, 1941, because just the year after was a turning point of the war between the Soviet Union and the Axis. So this is a big question. What if this didn't happen? This land lease from Iran to the Soviet Union.
Communism could have been destroyed, you could say.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating to think about. But
Yeah.
I was gonna say, man, I've really enjoyed this. I hate to cut it off right now. I gotta do a few things around the house, but we gotta do this again soon, as soon as you can,
Oh yeah, and
whenever you're free. Maybe we could talk more about this specific period in the history for sure.
oh yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, I would like to know what the audience wants to know, because I mean, you haven't really talked about Iranian on your channel except a tiny bit with the Bulgarian guy.
Yeah,
So
I wanted to
yeah,
get your perspective on it for sure.
yeah. So yeah, we would see what to talk about specifically, and I also had lots of questions and things I want to talk about, ask about the U.S., but we
Okay.
can,
Yeah, we could do that for sure. Absolutely.
yeah,
But
another
I
time,
want
I
to
guess.
thank you again. Yeah, we'll get us in another one. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I've really enjoyed it. I've once again I'm putting your link to your Telegram channel in the chat, and I want to thank the audience, everybody that stopped by. This was really interesting, and like I said, I really enjoyed it. And if we were able to pick a topic for the next time and actually focus on it, I think it'll be I think this episode was great, but I think you could really knock it out of the park, you could say, if we pick a specific topic and do a deep dive on it for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again, Surena. And I want to thank everybody in the chat, and check out his Telegram channel. I put the link to it in the chat. The link to it is also in the description box. And I want to thank y'all again. Thank you, Surena. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye bye.